Good morning. A little bit of a different start to the show today. I'm going to shut up and get out of the way because Mike Vrabel's at the podium for the last day of mandatory minicamp. So we're going to take you right out the gates live to St. Thomas Sports Park.
That we got to evaluate during our local pro day, that we're able to come here, work out for us, spend the day. There was a safety, even last year from middle, playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, Blankenship, and it had a great workout. And the guy that we targeted weren't able to get in the post draft. He chose the Eagles. So you get to see a lot of these players that some of them get drafted, some of them don't, but you get to have an interaction with them, and so we use that experience to isolate and target those few players that you mentioned. I got a flyover for my press conference today.
Any thoughts, Mike, been on Andre Dillard, kind of getting adjusted to your system, your scheme, new team? What's your sort of early?
He's come in. He's been here since the start of the program and has worked hard and has continued to get in shape and we demand a lot out of that group as far as finishing, and we try to make practice and the most conditioning that they can get, and so that in the game, we're able to finish and push piles and try to finish longer than the guy with the ball. And ultimately we have to improve our ability to protect the quarterback, and Andre's part of that, and he has to continue to work at those things. We talked yesterday about being able to go against Arden Key, and Arden, these guys are practicing like pros. They're working, they're helping each other, and I think it was a good start.
You found them to be a pretty quick study so far?
As far as I think that there are always going to be some there's new terminology from team to team, from year to year, but I think he's always asked questions. I've noticed him that if there's something, he goes back and he'll ask Hoss or Sully something, as it pertains to a question or something that came up.
How's Nico managed to has done some stuff on his own in previous offseason, but gets here, seems like he's always in shape and ready to go. How's he done that?
Well, that's what professionals, Jimmy. You've been around this game a lot of years, and that's what professionals do, whether they, are here or they're not. You're a professional athlete. You're expected to be in shape. You're expected to be prepared for the season to perform. And that's what I used those guys as an example yesterday. Like Nico and Kevin, they showed up for the mandatory minicamp. Obviously been working, ready to go, brought energy, picked up where they left off. And so that's the expectation for everybody, whether they're here or whether they're not.
What about Tierra Tar? He said he wants to take his game to another level this season. For you, how can he go about doing that?
For Tierra, it's always been and will always be, the ability to stay out there and play at the level with the effort that we require. Jeff plays a lot of snaps because Jeff plays them really good, but he's also physically conditioned to stay out there. And if Jeff was not running to the football, then we would bring him over on the side, get him some rest, and put him back in the game. And so we want Tier to play as many snaps as he possibly can at that level because he can help us. And that's our goal. It's communication that him and I have had to where we can try to get to him to be able to play, and help us on third down. And, even when Jeff wasn't out there were games where he factored and he improved his pass rush and his ability to affect the quarterback. So he knows that he needs to be an interior physical presence, obviously in the middle of the pocket in a run game, and then also, improve his pass rush and continue to work on his conditioning so that he can play, 65% of the snaps and not, 40 or 45.
With Stonehouse, what's the trade-off point in terms of him working to increase his hang time but maybe losing a few of the gross yards that he averaged last year?
Our number one goal, obviously, on the punt team is to flip the field and limit the return. And again, I think that there's a balance between that. He's working hard. He's working hard on his, location and hang time. And we all were accustomed to Brett when he was the best in the league at 45 yards, down the field, 2 yards from the sideline. Those are easy punts to cover. So Stoney's working hard, and I don't know what that balance is, but I know that he's got a big leg and he's willing, and we can continue to improve with our plus 50 punting and when we're trying to pin him inside the 10-yard line.
Aaron Brewer told me yesterday that he always anticipated that he was going to become a center in the NFL. How early did you guys identify that, and has that made his transition and your entire offensive line's transition easier?
He's worked at center in the past. I mean, he's had snaps in there. Just we've had, Ben's been here, and it's kind of where we needed him to play. And Bruce made those calls, and he jumped in there last year a couple times when we needed him. So, I think that we recognize some versatility up front with Brew, and so we're excited to see him continue to progress inside.
Mike, when you're changing offenses or coordinators on that side, when you go into this, is there a balance of trying to do things different but not get away from some of the core principles that have made you successful?
Well, I think that's always something that I think every company, every organization, every team, every family would want to try to do is have some core values that you believe in. There's a lot of different ways to approach a football team or a philosophy. There's a lot of different ways for people to run a business. And so I think that when you make changes, you want to try to still remain some of those core values, but then push the envelope of giving them new things to do and study and learn and be engaged with and make mistakes. Part of growth is making mistakes. And, there's always cool examples for me to pull out and say, listen, this was a mistake that happened last week. Came back and a quarterback or a receiver or somebody, fixed it or corrected it or recognized it, and they got the same situation. We think that practice is really important, so we'll try to keep those core values that we believe in, that we think that wins football games, that we know wins football games, but then also try to continue to add things to it.
As Tim said yesterday, he said, kind of stuck up for the offense even after last year, said, look, it's not broken, there's still some continuity. Has there been a good bit of continuity from last year to this year, even with a new system, so to speak?
Yeah. I think there's been some carryover with the coaches. We've had some really good additions. Excited to see where Tony Dews goes, with this group. Really excited to be able to add Justin and kind of his vision in the run game. And there was some similars. He's been in that system that we've had here, but then he's brought some things in here and some ideas. And, we're going to try everything, and we're going to see what we feel like gives us the best chance and what the players, respond to.
Christian Fulton dealing with a soft tissue injury?
Get here on time, and we'll answer some questions.
Coach, what position group have you seen in the last 2 days really take the biggest strides?
Position group analysis. We're grading them already, huh, Jill? I probably, you know what? I will tell you this. I thought that there were some cool pockets yesterday from an offensive line standpoint. Saw that, quarterbacks able to step up in a pocket and deliver some passes. Sometimes some we hit, some we didn't. But, I thought from that group, from one day to the next, I thought that there was at least some, good pocket, getting everybody on the same level, not getting, picked or on different levels. So that was that.
Mike, what can you tell us about Christian Fulton's situation?
That Christian is here, is under contract, and I would imagine he'll be ready for training camp.
How are some of the guys that we haven't seen, like Caleb Farley, Dylan Radins, how are they coming along?
You asked that question my goodness.
Well,
the buddy system. The buddy system.
No, it should have been followed.
So you're all about team for your team.
I just said, hold on, man. This is my time. I asked you, did you want to waste your one question on that? And you said you did, so that's why I went in a different direction yesterday. Christian will be ready to go. Excited to have him. So he's here working, studying. Go ahead, Teron. I'm sorry.
As far as Caleb Farley, Dylan Radins, how are they coming along?
Good. They're working hard. Caleb lifting hard, looks strong, is healthy. Again, just, had a procedure, had a back procedure, and those certainly come along at different times. Dylan, I would say is on schedule. Wouldn't anticipate him being able to start the July 25th or whatever the beginning of training camp is. I wouldn't anticipate him starting then. Obviously not. But, I think it's a good system. These guys are putting a lot of work in. They got a plan with Todd and Frank and following that.
There was a report yesterday that
about with the middle linebackers, you can't only see so much physicality. It's tying shorts in the spring. Same thing with offensive linemen and defensive linemen, of course. Are you happy with what you're getting accomplished with them and everything?
It is. We're asking our defensive linemen to play with their hands and play with pad level, right, when we get into some of those jog-through periods. And I think that's when you recognize that their improvement is that they can play at a less speed than 100%, play with their hands, play with pad level, move their feet, stay off the ground. That's really how I identify practices now is at this time of year is can you go out there and work and stay off the ground and not trip and fall over each other.
There was a report yesterday that Michael Brockers came in recently for a visit. Is that accurate, and where does that stand?
We had a group of defensive linemen in a couple weeks ago, so that's where that stands.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I'm right. On Radens, you said he's making strides, but he may not be ready at the
I wouldn't
start.
anticipate that he would be ready at the start of training camp. Just having been just a little more than 6 months post-op. I'm not going to guarantee anything, but I would say that Harold is further along just from a time from his surgery.
Coach, I wanted to ask you about the Division II and Division III players who've come out. In your experience, has that talent pool grown to reach some of those smaller schools?
I wouldn't want to say either way. I would, I think that there's obviously a lot of good players in those conferences and that level. Kids develop, athletes, people develop at different ages. What they look like at 17 or 18 when they go to college, or slip through to a Division II or Division III school. Just looking at my own kids and seeing how people develop between 18 and 22 or 23 years old. So if they can help us and they have an opportunity, that we'll give them that opportunity.
Along those lines, how do you evaluate guys maybe that have been in the USFL or XFL as far as thinking of adding somebody who could help you?
Yeah, our personnel department is watching all that tape, and we see who kind of stands out, and if we feel like they're better than the group that we have, or do we want to work them out and see where they're at, come in, give them a physical, just like the visit we talked about the other day. So we're watching all those players as well.
Coach, can you talk about how special this DB group can be once they're fully healthy?
Not really. Not now. They'll determine that. It's not going to be me hoping that they're special. You got to go out there. You got to cover your guy. You got to communicate. You got to be able to run multiple coverages. Not be on top in a red zone and let the receiver come back, to the goal line and catch a touchdown. All these things that we talk about. So I don't think anybody right now is focused on anything being special. It's about improvement for us.
That's Titans head coach Mike Vrabel ahead of the last day of mandatory minicamp. Kevin Byard's going to speak today. We're going to carry that press conference during the noon hour after they're off the practice field. Obviously, a lot of people anxious to hear from KB. You like that last question? How special can this DB group be? I don't know whose voice that was.
Mike, if you had to think of some sort of collection of letters to describe this defensive back group.
So let me be fair, because I know we need to go to break soon. I don't know who that is. I don't know whose voice that is. It just happened, I happen to notice when I can tell that somebody hasn't been asking Mike Vrabel questions for very long, because that's a TV question, but that's not a TV person that I know to be on the air right now. That's not anybody's voice that I recognize. Just one of those things that I'm sure it sounds better, because I've asked plenty of dumb questions in my life. I'll probably ask a dumb question at some point next week when we're back out there for OTAs. But just the idea, how special can this defensive back group be?
How about MGR0B? My guy received 0 balls.
My guy. Whatever happened? Did those gain any traction? Did anybody actually buy those My Man Catch No Balls shirts? I know that it had a moment. It had a moment in time.
It had its moment in the sun.
Well, I do feel bad for whoever's question we're making fun of because I'm sure, like I said, we could pinpoint any of the dumb questions that I've asked in my life, and that would be very easy to do. But every time a dumb one pops up, it always makes me laugh. 615-737-1045 is the number. DeAndre Hopkins making a visit to Nashville this weekend. We'll talk about that coming up next. Tunnel of Love, Bruce Springsteen? What are you trying to message today? You just grabbing random music?
Yeah.
Okay.
The second one.
We have to find a way to get new music. It all feels like it's from 50 years ago. All of it. Tunnel of Love and Bruce Springsteen is not that old, but it's probably 40 years old. Is this our entire library of music from the George Plaster era? Is that what we're working with here?
First, there's nothing wrong with that. Second, Moon Taxi. A couple of the guys from Moon Taxi will be in studio with us tomorrow for their album that comes out tomorrow. So is that new enough for you?
Yes, but we are not going to. They're not clowns coming here to perform for us at our every whim. I assume that they're not going to do a live rendition of the new music on their album, although they're, of course, welcome to do so. I have 8,000 microphones in here. I guess we're good.
That would be great.
That would be swell. But that is not the expectation. You're not outsourcing the music. I think at a certain point, Bruce isn't dead yet, God forbid, but like when the musical library starts to reflect an obituary page, I feel like we should start to move on at a certain point. Meanwhile, DeAndre Hopkins. Did we write the Titans wide receiver room off too soon? Will it right back? Stay tuned. So he's reportedly I think it was 2 minutes after I walked out of the studio when Tom Pelissero broke the news that he was going to, Hopkins that is, was going to visit Nashville on Sunday. And this is the first free agent visit that he will be taking, and it'll be with the Tennessee Titans. So Tim Kelly, Mike Vrabel, familiarity. They are going to see what his interest level is in being here and then determine whether they want him here or not. At least to hear Mike Vrabel tell it. So this was Mike Vrabel yesterday at the podium because the news broke about halfway through practice. Then you saw the PR people go over to Mike and let him know that somebody had just broken the news before his press conference on a Wednesday that DeAndre Hopkins would be making a visit on a Sunday. And Mike Vrabel took the first two questions on DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, the first thing is we want players that want to be here. I think we want people that want to be here, and then we'll work through anything else. And so, we brought in a bunch of different players. DeAndre will be somebody that we'll bring in early next week, at the end of this week, and go through the same visit that we go through with everybody, and then start the process.
With a visit like that, what can you pull from that visit? Is it a recruiting opportunity, or how does that benefit you?
I'm past the recruiting. I did that in college. I think that, again, would really just want people that want to be here. And then if that works out, then you go on to the next step. So this will be pretty much it until we, either sign or don't sign the next player.
He's got a reputation, Mike, for not
This will be, again, if that's what you're going to ask your question about today, Paul, I'm going to give you another opportunity, but I'm going to talk about the players that are here. And when DeAndre's here, I'll visit with him, and then we'll move on when we make any other transactions from there.
So that's Mike Vrabel talking about DeAndre Hopkins. What do you make of the line that he's past recruiting? Vrabel's past the point of recruiting at this phase of his life. He did that in college. It's true. Theoretically, in the NFL, you don't have to recruit anymore if you don't want to. But that was my biggest takeaway from hearing that, other than, the obvious that Hopkins is going to be here on Sunday. Should he be more interested in the recruiting element of it? And I take him at his word. He's not interested. It's kind of like Mike Tomlin. Remember the Mike Tomlin bit on, was it Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell? I can't remember which of the two situations he was trying to quell at the time. But basically it was, we want volunteers, not hostages. And that's fine. Mike Tomlin's very successful. Mike Tomlin has buy-in. Mike Vrabel does too. But at a certain point, wouldn't you think that the Titans would need to be doing a little bit of recruiting? Given this specific position, not specific to the player. The player is obviously a great player. He's not the best. He's not at the height of his career anymore, but he's still a good player, a really good player. Should there not be some kind of, and maybe he's just not saying it to us. I'm sure that whenever they get together, whatever that looks like, I'm sure it's going to be chopping it up like old friends. And, depending on, he's not going to say that he's not interested in being here, obviously, whether it's because of the football or because of the money. It's not like DeAndre Hopkins is going to outwardly express a disinterest in being here. He's taking his first free agent visit here. So maybe I'm hyper or over-analyzing one portion of that. But to me, it would seem counterintuitive for the Titans to not be interested in recruiting DeAndre Hopkins or by Mike Vrabel's own admission, anybody else, because that's not really what they do. They want to find out if the player wants to be here, and then they'll figure out whether they want him or not.
I mean, how much of these visits are recruiting, if that makes sense?
They did it with Ndamukong Suh. Took him to dinner, him and John Robinson. It was a whole thing. It was St. Patty's Day weekend. I remember I had to scramble the jets.
Then maybe it's semantics, because when you're bringing someone in, and there's obviously some mutual interest there, and you're just laying out why you think it would be a fit. You're laying out what you are thinking in terms of numbers, contracts, and all of those things. And then you head separate ways, call it a day, and wait for him to make a decision. That's basically recruiting, is it not? Hey, we brought you in because we're interested in bringing you here. If you're reciprocating that interest, let's talk about it. That, to me, sounds kind of like recruiting.
Yeah, but tomorrow...
I mean, it's not the Jets sitting Derek Carr down and saying, you will be a Hall of Famer if you come here.
Or the Jets pandering famously this offseason, flying to California with an entire contingent, a traveling contingent of ownership, coaches, and management to recruit Aaron Rodgers, telling Derek Carr he was going to be a Hall of Famer. Is that the line?
Pretty much. Isn't that what Diana Rossini reported?
I can't remember. I remember it was something completely ridiculous.
It was like, if you come here and win a Super Bowl, you are in the Hall of Fame.
No. I love that the Jets think they matter that way. You have not mattered of any consequence other than a couple of Rex Ryan, Mark Sanchez years. My entire lifetime, the Jets have not mattered.
It's like, because you win with the Jets, that would make you a Hall of Famer?
When? In what era of football? Please tell me, because it's certainly not in the last damn near 29 years of my life.
That you go win a Super Bowl with the New Orleans Saints? Nobody cares. You come win one here, Hall of Fame, first ballot.
It's like, why is Archie Manning in the Hall of Fame? He's not in the NFL Hall of Fame.
I don't
right? Because the Saints were terrible. But like, Archie Manning was famous as a really good football player on terrible Saints teams, right? Famously, the Aints of that era. I don't think Archie Manning is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
No, he's in the College Football Hall of Fame.
Okay, that's an important distinction. So maybe it's so. Go to the Jets, you'll go to the Hall of Fame. Go to the Saints, you'll be the Aints. The Jets. Out of here. Either way, I guess recruiting in the sense, it depends on your definition of the word, right? Recruiting can be as simple as, yes, we're interested in your services. We would like to see how interested you are in us. We will get together. We will put you through a workout. It'll be like every other workout that we do with these players. Then we can discuss, your interest beyond that. And by the way, this is going to be this will drag out over multiple months. I will all but guarantee it for DeAndre Hopkins, because it's not going to be the last free agent visit that he takes. There has been a lesser market for him, but as soon as one team starts to have him in, there will be others, and he'll make a bit of a tour out of it. Clowney did, it was during COVID, but Clowney was kind of doing the same thing with a variety of different teams. Remember how much the Seahawks were involved at the end about bringing him back, the Titans involved in that. There was a couple of other teams in the mix, and those were easier to do because it was virtual. But DeAndre Hopkins, there's no reason he's not going to show up for OTAs, certainly. I know Julio did. Hell, I think they traded for Julio. It was like 2 years ago, like yesterday or something like that they did the Julio Jones deal. And Julio Jones drove up the very next day to participate in that week's OTAs. It was a whole event. DeAndre Hopkins not going to do that. And Hopkins is going to see what the market is and hear a variety of different offers. And beyond the Bills and the Chiefs, we haven't seen anybody but the Titans reportedly have interest, although according to Tom Pelissero and Aaron Rappaport of the NFL Network, there are several other teams interested in DeAndre Hopkins. So we'll see that manifest in the next coming weeks. Jameson says, Buck sounds so excited to talk about nothing but D-Hop for the next 3 months. Hell yeah, are you kidding me? I'm always honest with you. Certainly, at some point, I will get tired of it, but you know what I'd rather do? I would rather talk about DeAndre Hopkins than not talk about DeAndre Hopkins for a summer. I'd rather have a summer of D-Hop than not, even if they don't sign him. You know why? Because it gives me something to talk about. So how that ends up materializing remains to be seen. But I do think that, fans are gonna look at this a certain way. Because I was shocked by the reaction to Treylon Burks' comments about DeAndre Hopkins. I had several people reach out to me. I was talking to somebody this morning about the idea that Treylon Burks might not have given the most glowing endorsement of bringing D-Hop to Nashville, which me sitting at the press conference with Treylon Burks yesterday, I was confused by what they meant. But we'll play those comments for you and see how you received them. I think that when you look at all the different options for the Titans on the table, this is one that makes the most sense. They should do this deal, provided that it doesn't, that they don't bend over backwards to do it. Financially, I mean, just because they'll have, it's somewhere in the area of $140 million in available cap space in 2024. You know who's going to know that? Hopkins and his agent. So if it means doing a multi-year deal because DeAndre Hopkins sees even more green on the other side, maybe it's not worth it to you. But he immediately improves this wide receiver room more than I would argue any other wide receiver room in the country right now. The only other wide receiver room that I would argue he would improve as much as he would the Titans would be New England. Because I think Juju Smith-Schuster is the best wide receiver option that the Patriots have at this point. And while Juju has a longer career and has had more career success than somebody like Treylon Burks, I don't think anybody looks at Juju as a high-end target at this point. Top Tier says Burks was being considerate of his current teammates. We'll get to that, I promise. But there was a surprising amount of commentary about Treylon Burks and his comments around DeAndre Hopkins that I thought was, completely arbitrary in the grand scheme of things. Does Hopkins even want to play here? Well, a text that I got yesterday from a person in the league who I trust very, very much. They sent me this text with about a half hour left of Titans practice, and all it said was, money matters more to Nuke than anything. So keep that in mind. If you got enough money, you can be in the DeAndre Hopkins business. The question is, and we'll certainly dive into this in the next couple of days, how do they create that space? Is it worth it to them to create that space? And what is the best option for them to do so that keeps the most competitive version of this team? Do you even want DeAndre Hopkins here? Because I saw a couple of Titans fans who expressed a disinterest in him. That surprised me. We'll talk about this together. 615-737-1045 is the number. What we are going to get into next, a story in the NFL that has taken up a lot of headlines, a lot of television and sports talk radio commentary. The idea of gambling, specifically in the NFL as of late, but we've seen it impact college baseball. We've seen it impact every other sport at this point. So we're going to speak with Dr. James Whalen of the Gambling Clinic, who's going to give us his insights on what he sees between the league and its players and the partnerships that they have entered into with these gambling entities. I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion, and we'll get into that coming up next. So we haven't really spent much time on this latest story. I know I touched on it a little bit on the primetime show, Bert and I did. But what's happening with the Indianapolis Colts and one of their defensive backs that is entangled in yet another one of these gambling situations as an active NFL player. So the Colts have been made or have acknowledged the situation going on with Isaiah Rodgers. He's arguably their best defensive back at this point and a core special teams player for them. He himself, Rodgers, has acknowledged that he is involved in a gambling situation. The NFL is currently investigating for possible violations, though a punishment has not yet been announced, so they're investigating the severity of it. He tweeted, Rodgers did, responsibility, taking full responsibility for his actions in his own words. I know I have made mistakes, and I am willing to do whatever it takes to repair the situation. The last thing I ever wanted to do was be a distraction. The Colts organization, my coaches, and my teammates, I've let people down that I care about. And he goes on to talk about errors in judgment and all these different things. Mike Vrabel was asked about this last week, and he said, we've always talked to the players about we're definitely held to a higher standard on a lot of different things than, your buddies might be who want to wager or want to put together a parlay on the NBA finals and the Stanley Cup. What's going on right now? Maybe a little baseball in there too, right? You can't do that because you're an active NFL player. And reportedly, the sportsbook account was opened under the name of an associate of Rodgers, not Rodgers himself. So he's doing this through a third party. Approximately 100 bets were placed on the account over an undisclosed amount of time, including on Colts games, which would, of course, be hugely problematic.
He pulled a Brad Bohannon, the Alabama baseball coach.
That's right.
That placed a massive wager on Alabama baseball, but got somebody else to do it. Thought that wouldn't get him caught.
Yeah, but Brad Bohannon did it on apparently a game that nobody else was betting on and put a ton of money down on that specific game.
Yeah.
But still, red flags, right? So Colts games, including Colts games, according to sources, most of the bets were in the range of $25 to $50, so nothing crazy, although there was at least one low four-figure bet. So an NFL spokesperson said that they had nothing to add at this point. The Indiana Gaming Commission is now involved with ESPN, and they have been confirming that they have information pertaining to the matter without developments that are upcoming. So you have all these different things, right? This has happened to the Lions. It's happened to the Commanders. It's happened to the Falcons. And I texted a couple of different people on not just the team that I cover, but a couple of different NFL teams. And I said, all right, what do you think? What do you think about this situation? Is what's happening fair, for lack of a better term? Just to kind of see, or is this common? Like, how common is this actually? Because I don't know. I feel like the vast majority of my buddies in my life wager on sports on a regular basis. I feel like there's more people that I know in my life that do wager as opposed to don't, or at least sports fans in my life who do as opposed to don't. So I have to imagine that, NFL players who watch basketball or NBA players who are paying attention to the NFL are going to be involved in this too. And the text that I got back from a couple of different people across the league was, this stuff can happen to anybody on any team because, to an extent, dudes in every locker room are gambling, right? It's just, are they doing it in a way that's allowing them to circumvent the rules that the league has in place with its new gambling partnership? So with that, we welcome in Dr. James Whalen of the Gambling Clinic, who is somebody that I've gotten to know a little bit over the course of the last couple of months, and we're grateful for his expertise here. Good morning, Dr. Whalen.
Morning, Buck. Good to talk to you.
Great to have you. So I guess, Dr. Whalen, let's start here. Generally what we're seeing in the world of athletics, given the partnerships that these leagues have now not only entered into, but are, I don't want to say forcing down our throats for lack of a better term, the trend that you see with the athletes, the suspensions across the various leagues, what do you make of the behavior of the players and the coaches that you're seeing get caught up in this?
Well, I think it was just a matter of time. I think the presence of it in our society, athletes, coaches, et cetera, are just human beings, and they're going to be wanting to do things just the way everyone else does. I also think that it's good to have policies. I think the the statement by the Titans coach is a good thing to talk about things, but at the same time, you got to put things in place to safeguard the integrity of the sport. Otherwise, the fun of the sport and the fun of gambling on the sports will suffer. We've seen it before.
As a professional, have they put enough? I mean, it's obviously a small sample size. This is relatively recent in the last couple of years where states have been legalizing. Have they put enough safeguards in place in your estimation?
I think not. My own belief is that these leagues need to engage in understanding what their responsibility are to, one, safeguard the sport, but secondly, protect those athletes and their staff. You would guess that somewhere between 1% and 5% of any group are likely to have a problem with gambling. So you have to begin with that as the assumption, and then to set up prohibitions without putting really clear enforcement and education behind it doesn't do anybody any good.
Dr. James Whalen is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. He and his staff founded the Gambling Clinic at the University of Memphis. It's a program that I've enjoyed getting to know more about, and it's a program that can be very, very useful if you're somebody who is experiencing issues as a result of gambling. Dr. Whalen, for context for the audience, can you describe the program itself and the results that you've seen in helping people gain capacity with how they go about, specifically in our world, sports wagering, but gambling in particular?
Yeah, sure can, Buck. And what's important is that we don't demonize gambling, but we recognize that some people are going to be harmed. And we're here to help people develop resources or for them to use other resources in their life to bring to bear so that their gambling is not causing them harm. And we do that by individual meetings with folks. We find the best success is when people can meet with a member of my team for 8 to 10 sessions. They can meet in person or virtually. We do telehealth across the state. And what we find is that well over 80% of the people who complete a treatment will realize meaningful changes, not just in their gambling behavior, but actually in their overall well-being, because that stress of not having the problem sort of disappears for them.
TheGamblingClinic.com is where you can go for more information. Dr. James Whalen here with us on 104.5 The Zone. We're discussing the latest gambling-related news in the NFL in particular, specifically the Colts being the latest of subject of an NFL investigation into gambling, not only on a variety of different games, but Colts games with an active Colts player involved through a third party. With that being said, Dr. Whalen, the situation for the leagues right now is, a financial punishment and a suspension determined in length based on the severity of the infraction, but not necessarily, to the best of my knowledge, I don't know that these leagues have incorporated a treatment process or an option for these players to potentially gain more insight or resources on how to better handle their situations. I think it's just actively discouraging them from gambling outright, no?
Oh, no, that's exactly it. You forbid people to do something, and then you blame them if they do something that everyone else is doing. And it's not, you're right on point, Buck, that they're not providing their members of their squads with the tools and ways of getting help. Some of these players, I don't know any of these players, but they may be having difficulties that they're not going to just be able to say, oops, I'm going to stop this. This idea that you can just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and move on, it's just not true. And setting up protective mechanisms for the sport and also help for the staff, I think is just pragmatically good ideas.
He's Dr. James Whalen. TheGamblingClinic.com is where you can go to learn more about the process that him and his staff at the University of Memphis have implemented. They're helping so many people gain the capacity that they need to be able to manage their gambling habits more efficiently, more effectively, and, of course, more safely. Dr. Whalen, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate you stopping in and providing some insights for us.
And I appreciate you, Buck, and you shouting out for the the right stuff to happen.
Yes, sir. That's Dr. Whalen with us on 104.5 The Zone. So Jeff Simmons was on Good Morning Football today. He made some comments as to the state of the Tennessee Titans. We're going to play those for you coming up next.
It is 10:59. Good morning from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Free agent wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins will make his first visit to the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. It was first reported by Tom Pelissero of NFL Network yesterday. Mike Vrabel was asked about the visit when speaking with Titans media on Wednesday.
Well, the first thing is we want players that want to be here. I think we want people that want to be here, and then we'll work through anything else. And so, we brought in a bunch of different players. DeAndre will be somebody that we'll bring in early next week, at the end of this week, and go through the same visit that we go through with everybody, and then, start the process.
Around the NFL, Adam Schefter reported this morning that Minnesota Vikings running back Dalvin Cook is now a free agent, was informed of his release today. The 27-year-old running back is officially on the market. NBA Finals, the Denver Nuggets took Game 3 with a 109-94 win over the Miami Heat. Another triple-double for Nikola Jokic, and Denver has a 2-1 series lead. Game 4 in Miami will be Friday. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour underway. Welcome in. Welcome back if you've been hanging out with us. We're happy to have you. If you're listening to the show on the radio, streaming it on Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, listening on the app, or getting the podcast after the fact. Thanks for spending a little time. Titans having a visit with DeAndre Hopkins on Sunday. We spoke a little bit about that to start the show. You'll hear more from Traylon Burks, Tom Pelissero, and Ian Rappaport on that here in just a moment. But Jeffrey Simmons made an appearance on Good Morning Football today. He was giving some interesting quotes that caught people's attention. It's basically what we spent our entire spring on, I would say. The R word, retool. Do the Titans think that they are in the midst of one? Retool, refurbish,
renovate,
remodel. You didn't have another one? You ran out?
Well, I'm still upset with you. I knew I shouldn't have trusted you to keep that list.
I think I have the list. I could probably take off my laptop.
We came up with an impressive list of words that start with R.
I think you're giving us entirely too much credit for how impressive this list actually was. Let's see on the things of. Do you ever go through your? Do you use your notes app?
Yes, for almost everything.
Do you actually?
Yes.
Okay, it's just always funny to see what I've scribbled down in a rush in my notes app.
Yeah, I'll put like a code, a confirmation code for some random purchase, and I'll remember that it's in this random show rundown from 8 weeks ago.
Right.
Just this collection of numbers.
No, I think I deleted the R words list.
I knew it. I knew you would do this.
Shame. The last thing I have saved in my notes app is it's from May 23rd. It simply says titled Practice Observation, not plural, observation, and all it says is sharp, pretty reception from 17.
So it was just one observation.
Just the one.
So accurate. Just one practice observation.
What a waste of time.
Yeah, I'll dig up notes from months and months ago that I just have no idea what it was about.
That's hilarious. Either way, Jeff Simmons on Good Morning Football was talking about the idea of the Titans rebuilding.
How do you characterize the expectations heading into the season?
I don't look at it as we're rebuilding. Me technically, I like to win. I'm not looking to go and, lose any game just because we all of a sudden rebuilding. I think what we're doing right now, doing this, even from OTAs, phase 1 up until now, we in minicamp. We're trying to build something here in Tennessee, and that's the winning culture. We're trying to build a winning culture. And our foundation of the way we want to play, and the new guys, and of course the guys who've been around, they know what kind of we expect here in Tennessee. But mainly the new guys that coming in, who I feel like we had some great signings. Them guys have bought in already to what we expect here in Tennessee, and the way Coach Brady wants us to play here in Tennessee. So I don't look at it as a rebuilding. I look at it, as another opportunity to come back this year to finish our season off the way it's supposed to be last year. Because, the way we finished last year wasn't near as what we wanted it to be. We didn't finish the way I wanted it to be, especially being the leader and captain. That's not who we are in Tennessee. And like I said, right now, this what build a team. This is what your foundation is being built, during this phase here and then going into training camp. So I'm looking forward to the season. I'm not looking for no rebuild season. I'm looking forward to win.
You remember that whole, tank for Caleb Williams contingent of people who were saying, oh, it's ridiculous that they would try and actually win games this year, actually try and be meaningfully competitive because it doesn't benefit them in the long term. Why would they? You fools. Tank for the best possible pick. Tank for the quarterback. Tank. And that's fine, say from the outside.
And we've been telling people from the jump that that's ridiculous, that will never happen.
Yeah, but it's different when you and I are yammering about it for the better part of months and when they hear Jeff Simmons say it. Go ahead and tell Jeff, who is sobbing in the locker room after the Jacksonville game because he's spent 8 weeks shooting up his ankle. Go ahead and tell Jeff you want to take this season.
I mean, we heard Rand Carthon talk about it. He said, imagine me walking into Mike Vrabel's office and using the word tank. It wouldn't go over very well.
The way that people have gone about, and listen, you are entirely entitled to play armchair GM any way you want to. I'm not here to make the rules for you. I'm just here to tell you when your rules are stupid. They don't apply to real football. Where is the most, in the NFL, can you identify for me the last team that we truly knew, clearly and obviously, to be tanking for a superior draft pick? Because Miami in the tank for Tua, that started out that way, and then Brian Flores decided he wasn't interested in that, and they ended up winning a fair amount of games at the end of that season.
Indy for luck?
Indy for luck is probably the most recent one, where they were legitimately upset by the idea of beating the Titans at the end of the season because it might impact the suck for luck, right?
Jonathan on the F&M Bang chat says Texans last year, but I don't buy that. I don't think Lovie Smith was trying to lose any games.
Lovie Smith won a game.
He cost them the number one draft pick.
He actively cost them the first overall pick in this year's draft.
On the final week of the regular season.
Now, management, by the way. Stephen Ross of the Dolphins, who has been embroiled in scandal and controversy a variety of different ways, but most famously now for the allegation of $100,000 handshakes to lose games, right? Management sometimes thinks the way that you do if you are a pro-tank proponent. Management would like to see the team tank for the better draft pick because it means potentially the better quarterback. It means, exciting things to sell to fans. We can get more season tickets if we draft the quarterback at 3 as opposed to the guard at 11, right? Football teams don't work that way. Football coaches, players, they don't work that way. There's too many people whose jobs and finances are caught up in the middle of this. So you can actively wish it. You can say that it'd be in their best interest. You may even be right. But one, there is no proven way to secure the first overall draft pick, even if you are actively tanking. Look at the Texans last year. You know what the Texans did? They won a game at the end of the season. They cost themselves the first overall pick. Their quarterback situation, if Bryce Young goes on to look substantially better than C.J. Stroud, Texans fans will curse the name of Lovie Smith for years to come because he won a game at the end of the year. I've never understood why people are content to punt on football seasons, essentially. As a football fan, as a fan of a particular franchise, why you would actively root for that franchise to lose games when the parity in the NFL indicates that you're probably going to get a decent draft pick, or the parity in the NFL indicates that you're probably going to have a big enough variance to where that tanking for a draft pick isn't going to matter with the way that they turn over playoff teams. I'm not arguing that it couldn't expedite the process to get the better draft pick, to get the best possible quarterback, and potentially turn your franchise around a lot faster than you might do it the other way. But football teams don't do those things. So you're setting an unrealistic expectation for yourself. You're putting unfair pressure on the people who are actively trying to win these football games because you're saying it's not in their best interest to do so, you fools, even while they're trying to coach for their jobs and play for their jobs. And so when Jeff Simmons expresses that, hopefully that's enough to get it across to I don't know what percentage of the population, but there's a loud enough percentage of the population that insists on things like starting Will Levis or starting Malik Willis in the effort to not win, actively try and win football games.
Well, you know what would quiet that portion of the Titans fan population?
What's that?
DeAndre Hopkins.
You think that's enough? But how silly is that? How completely – think about that. Now, he's important. He matters. He'd help them. He's not – we did the one piece away rant yesterday. The only team that's, I mean, in my estimation, the last couple of years been one piece away. You could argue the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Brady. You could argue the Jets with Rodgers. You could argue the Broncos with Manning.
No, I wouldn't even say the Bucs with Brady. Ton of players came with Brady to Tampa Bay.
I think if you go back and look at that roster, you're not wrong. Like they did get players to come to Tampa to play with Tom Brady. Sue, Antonio Brown, like
Gronk,
players who mattered. But I think you would be surprised by how much talent they organically had on that roster that was being undermined by Jameis Winston throwing 30 damn interceptions. Because the wide receivers weren't bad, right? They had the wide receivers. They had the offensive line. They had the defense. Sue made them better. Shaq Barrett made them better. But either way, like Tampa did the super team thing in 2020. They won a Super Bowl off it. They got the quarterback too. But even Tampa, think about that. Tampa beat you, making the argument that the best player of all time being a part of that team was not, quote unquote, one piece away because of all the different pieces that they added as a result of Tom Brady coming there. So the Titans are not one piece away. There's really hardly ever an NFL team that is. But does it change it enough to make you more meaningfully competitive? Because at that point, your argument is not a piece away from a Super Bowl, right? But a piece away from making the playoffs. But even then, the Titans were a game away from making the playoffs last year, and you had people actively arguing for them to lose the game, get the better draft pick, miss the playoffs. Because why make the playoffs just to get roasted, right? Just to get buried. They may well have done so. You have no idea, though. And the idea of going through another football season thinking that way, one, it's just the most loser mentality that I could possibly imagine. And two, it sounds miserable. Like, why would you want to exist in that state? Where you turn on your football team every Sunday just to watch them lose? Or are you just saying you're not going to watch football while your team loses and then come back for the NFL draft? Because at that point, you're not a football fan. You're a fan of transactions. And while there are plenty of people who are fans of just the transactions, it seems, or fans of just the draft process as much as they are the actual games themselves, the vast majority of us would rather see competitive football. I do think. Treylon Burks was asked yesterday about DeAndre Hopkins. His comments were received in a way that I thought was odd. We'll play them for you. We'll see what you make of them, and then we'll react to that coming up next. Welcome back. Here on the show, Treylon Burks was asked about DeAndre Hopkins yesterday. You're going to hear those comments here in just a second. Did I scare you back there? What happened? I heard you yelling down the hallway at me. But either way, we'll get to Lucas's panic here in just a second. So Hopkins and this visit on Sunday is something that is going to go down, and Mike Vrabel was asked about it. He was answered more of the questions than you might otherwise have expected him to. And in the middle of all that, saying we're not really recruiting at this point. We're going to find out if a guy wants to be here or not. And in the middle of that, adding to it, I'm kind of past that point of my life. So with DeAndre Hopkins and adding him to this wide receiver room, we discussed the idea that he immediately makes them better in ways that he probably does not for 31 other, maybe 30 other wide receiver rooms in the country right now. But when Treylon Burks was asked about it yesterday, the response was, I thought, very diplomatic. Now, apparently a lot of Titans fans didn't receive it that way. So I want to play those comments back and see if we hear anything different the second time around.
That's something that I can't control. He's an awesome player, great player. Would be fun to play with him. So, if we end up getting him, then we get him. If we don't, then we don't. But no offense to him, he's a great player. But I'm just glad. I like playing with who we have here. So
somebody you could learn a lot from, though.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, he would be a great mentor. I've watched D-Hop since I was younger. One of my favorite players, and he just carries himself the right way, and then his game on the field just speaks for itself.
So I had somebody come up to me this morning, and a couple of people texting me yesterday. In fact, I'll read the text specifically. The idea that Treylon Burks doesn't sound like he wants DeAndre Hopkins in Nashville at all. I said, what are you talking about? How could you possibly have gleaned that from, one, how little Treylon Burks actually said about the situation, and two, based on comments that were nothing but diplomatic. The only thing that he said in there was, no offense, but I like the guys that we have. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he said, no offense, yeah, I like the guys that we have right now. Okay, well, when he said no offense, it kind of made me perk my head up in the press conference a little bit because I was like, did he say anything that was offense-worthy? Which, of course, he didn't. But one, Treylon Burks is not like he doesn't have a ton of vocal variation. I don't know if people just don't know what Treylon Burks sounds like or something like that, that it hit him a little flatly, whatever the case may be. It's not like Treylon Burks is actively advocating against DeAndre Hopkins coming to Nashville. I just don't understand what people expect him to say in a spot like that. And so there are things that would automatically benefit Treylon Burks from DeAndre Hopkins being here because I don't know who the second. If something happens to Treylon Burks, and you turn my microphone off. Did you know that back there? Somebody said Mike is muted, bud. My bad. I think Lucas accidentally hit a button back there that turned my microphone. It's okay, bud. We'll figure it out. But the whole situation for Treylon Burks at this stage, DeAndre Hopkins immediately benefits what it is that Treylon Burks wants to accomplish. There's plenty that Treylon Burks could learn from DeAndre Hopkins. And like I said, his presence immediately makes them a more potent team, not just for Treylon, but for Derek, not just for Derek, but for Kyle Phillips, not just for Phillips, but Racey McMath. Like, everybody gets better on this roster if Hopkins is a part of the plan. Now, he still has to ultimately agree to sign here, and that process could take several more months. But the idea that Treylon Burks, just because he didn't sound the most excited about it, maybe it's just because I was sitting there watching him answer the question, and also I've been around Treylon for a little more than a year now, so I kind of understand how it is that he speaks. In fact, he's more energetic now at the podium than he used to be. But I wouldn't take anything major away from Traylon Burks' commentary on DeAndre Hopkins other than he was given a PR talking point by the PR staff before he walked out on the podium because they probably said, hey, this news about DeAndre Hopkins broke in the middle of practice. The media is inevitably going to ask you about it. Say you like the guys who you're working with here. Say it's out of your hands. Say that you love DeAndre Hopkins as a player because, of course, you do. And all of that can be true. But also, those are the PR talking points. Stick to them. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Let's go to Brad in Brentwood next. Hey, Brad.
Hey, Buck. Wanted to ask a question. Do we know, is Hopkins visiting any other teams at this point?
No, this is his first free agent visit.
Okay. Has he anything else scheduled or talked about at all?
I haven't seen anything scheduled. Beyond the Titans, the only team that have had reported interest in him are the Bills and the Chiefs.
Yeah, this is the only visit that's been actually reported.
Yeah. Did he have a follow-up, or did you fade him down? What do you got, Brad?
Nope, he gone.
Okay, good. So that's the situation for DeAndre Hopkins right now. There will be more visits, I can assure you. I don't know that he has anything scheduled specifically after the Titans or the order of what he might have scheduled right now, but I know it is being discussed as several other teams being interested in him beyond the Titans, the Bills, and the Chiefs. I've seen the Cowboys say no. I've seen the Jets say no. And there was another team that I can't remember exactly what. Oh, the Jaguars. The Jaguars took themselves out of the Hopkins running last week, according to Doug Peterson. Omar is in Houston up next. Hey, Omar.
Hey, I was just calling to say that do you think possibly that maybe this might be why Vrabel and them didn't draft a high pick for a receiver because they maybe already, behind closed doors knew that, DeAndre Hopkins was speaking with Derrick Henry at workout saying that he would want to come here, and that was the other option that Vrabel was speaking about in the presser a while back, saying that there's other ways to get, receivers?
No. I mean, it just happened to work out that way.
Just how their board fell.
Well, there is that too.
Roll the dice, play the board. Was that the
roll the dice, play the board is what I mean. God love him. He couldn't have realized what he did in real time when he said that. But the hornet's nest that Rand Carthon whacked when he said of the lack of urgency around the wide receiver, rolling the dice, playing the board. Oof. No, I mean they knew that Hopkins might be out there, but there's nothing that didn't affect their draft strategy at all. Certainly not. They know that Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins both work out in Dallas during the offseason. Did it affect their draft strategy? Certainly not. There's nothing that guarantees that he ends up here. And you can try. Listen, you can Charlie this from It's Always Sunny all you want to, and Pepe Sylvia, and trying to draw all the different connections to something with a conspiracy theory about how it is that DeAndre Hopkins might end up a Titan.
New season premiered last night.
Where can I watch this? Is it Hulu?
Yes, it premieres on FXX, and then it's on Hulu on demand.
I feel like I should get. I don't think I've seen FXX. I feel like it's probably something that's a part of my cable package. I don't know why I can't for the life of me find it. Either way, I would like to see the new season of It's Always Sunny. But I wouldn't read too much into this, other than he's going to be here on Sunday, and other than they're interested in him. That's all that this is right now. Could it be more after Sunday? Sure. It's Thursday. So don't, it's the keep your powder dry type of stuff, right? It's notable. It's news. It's a wide receiver. It's a really, really famous one. It's somebody who your coach and OC have a good relationship with by all reports.
And at the time of the draft, DeAndre Hopkins was still an Arizona Cardinal.
Yep.
To acquire him, you would have had to trade for him in that massive contract.
And they removed themselves from those discussions.
Yes. And so we did not know if he was going to be released or if some team was going to trade for him. You had no idea what was going to happen with DeAndre. And that was around the time, it might have been right before or right after that Hopkins is on social media saying, y'all thought I wanted to leave?
Yeah. He was messaging before they ended up releasing him that he was coming back to Arizona. Now, whether he was just doing that for the sake of public pressure or fans or whatever the case, but he was literally saying that he was going back to Arizona not that long ago.
Which I don't know who would have been throwing to him at Arizona as Kyler Murray gets back from the ACL he suffered late 2022.
Well, did you not listen to the I Am Athlete interview? That Houston quarterback that his grandpa sent him highlights of.
That's right, Clayton Tune.
Clayton Tune. So with that being said, DeAndre Hopkins, whatever circumstance has led to this Sunday's visit, that's all it is for the time being. We will see how Sunday's visit develops and how aggressive they are after the fact in trying to sign him to a contract if they feel like it's the right deal for them. And how open he is to being, or how receptive he is to a contract at the time. Because I don't think they're going to, it's not a situation where DeAndre Hopkins is going to come to Nashville and it's going to be a situation like you can't let him get it out of the building.
No, lock the door.
Lock the door. You remember that? You remember a time in NBA basketball when Mark Cuban was trying to find ways to barricade, who was that dopey center who's basically aged like a not dopey. Dopey is unfair. But like the star Clippers teams, right? It was Blake Griffin. It was Chris Paul. Who was the center? DeAndre Jordan. There was a time in basketball where DeAndre Jordan was one of the most coveted free agents, and like Mark Cuban was sitting outside his home trying to keep him from leaving or answering the phone because he wanted to get him on the Mavericks instead of the Clippers. Like, this is the kind of stuff that's not happening with DeAndre Hopkins and the Titans. Based on Mike Vrabel's comments, he's not recruiting anybody to the Titans. And that was how it struck me initially, how much to actually read into the idea that Mike Vrabel's not quote-unquote recruiting, however you want to define recruiting. I wouldn't get too bent out of shape out of that either. I would just say that at this point, we all know their needs. They obviously think that they could be better, potentially, with adding a player like this. They want to see how much better they can get versus how much it's going to cost them to get how much better, right? Because there is nothing that guarantees DeAndre Hopkins is the difference between an AFC South title, a wild card berth, a divisional round win, a Super Bowl run, right? There's nothing that guarantees that. But it indisputably could help them as a football team.
I think it makes a massive difference. Massive difference. Even if DeAndre Hopkins is not the DeAndre Hopkins that we saw at times last season.
Why do you feel differently about Hopkins than you did Julio? Because I don't remember you being just because we're over 2 years removed from the date of the Julio trade that people continue to cite as one of the biggest reasons not to do the DeAndre Hopkins deal, just because you've done the 30-year-old wide receiver thing and it hasn't worked out. Why is Hopkins so much more substantially a difference with this version of the Titans than Julio Jones was with that version?
So Julio Jones, 32, correct? He's 34 now. He was 32 when he came to the Titans.
DeAndre Hopkins just turned 31.
The decline, you had already seen the decline from Julio. It was feasible. It was very much there from the previous season.
I will disagree with you only in the sense that the decline was in terms of his health, not in terms of his play.
That's what I'm talking about.
What I saw from Julio practice and when he was healthy enough to play in a game
absolutely.
was still Julio.
Yes, we saw moments of Julio against the Bills on Monday Night Football. Yes, I'm talking about strictly his health.
Yes.
It has been over 2 years since DeAndre Hopkins was dealing with a hamstring, any sort of health issues in that 2021 season.
Correct.
He was completely healthy in 2022. He was productive with the rotating quarterback room, injuries at the quarterback position. The only thing that held him back last year was the 6-game suspension for PEDs that he obviously denied, saying he ingested something he didn't know he ingested. It was one of those situations.
Me too.
So, yes, I for me, younger, and we are further removed. There's not a trend here of DeAndre Hopkins struggling with availability the way that a trend was starting to show with Julio coming in. And just for the fact of having to account for him and what that can do for Treylon Burks and his development.
That was the logic behind Julio too.
Yeah.
With AJ in year 2.
Sure. And if DeAndre Hopkins comes in here and he's not available for most of the season, then sure, then the point is moot and we're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That was the logic for Julio. And why didn't that work with Julio? Because he wasn't available. He wasn't playing.
And neither was AJ.
And AJ was hurt a lot too. So yes, all of this is with the asterisk of if healthy. That is an underlying part of this entire conversation. But just for the fact of defenses having to adjust and account for DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks. I mean, Blaine was talking about that impact yesterday on Blaine and Mickey. Said it completely changes things for a cornerback coming into a game to play the Tennessee Titans. and what they feel they have to take away.
You know why else it's different?
Why?
Because you're not assuming an old contract or giving up draft picks to get it. And those draft picks.
Absolutely, yeah.
Draft picks being a second and a future fourth.
Yeah, it won't hurt you as bad down the road.
No. They're still paying Julio. Or at least they're still accounting for dead money against the cap because of Julio. It's one of the biggest reasons that your financial constraints are what they are this year. Now, I think that I largely agree with Lucas. I just wanted him to articulate why he felt the difference to be so big between the Julio deal and a theoretical Hopkins deal, because there's nothing that guarantees that this is going to happen. But there is far less risk associated with DeAndre Hopkins at this stage of his career than there was with Julio Jones at that stage. It's just about the finances and how much are you willing to free up? You can free up as much as you need to. But your finances are very, very favorable moving into 2024. The question is, how much of that are you willing to mortgage to try and get what is indisputably a 1, potentially 2-year fix? Maybe it's worth it to you.
And if it's about winning this year and being competitive this year, why is it not worth it to you?
That, I think, is the larger question for somebody like Mike Vrabel or Rand Carthon. You keep telling us you want to be competitive. You keep telling us that we're sleeping on you. All right, show us. How much are we actually sleeping on you? How much are we actually sleeping on your aspirations?
Like the Julio thing didn't work, but the intent behind it was something that Titans fans got behind.
One of John Robinson's most popular moves and the thing that people are still dragging him for now.
We've talked about this. His most popular moves in the moment were some of his worst moves in hindsight. Yes.
Disasters.
But I don't know. I don't know that people look at that move and say, I can't believe we traded for Julio. Everybody wanted that in that moment. I think for John Robinson, it will always come down to trading A.J. Brown.
JR on the F&M Bank chat says, all paths lead back to Tannehill for being able to make a Hopkins deal. Cap space, gentlemen. Well, no, actually, that's not true. There's any variety of options that you can take. You can take a Tannehill path if you so choose.
Yeah, that would mean extending him, right?
Yes, you wouldn't flat out release him. So if you want to extend Ryan Tannehill,
I'm saying if you're moving Tannehill money to make room for Julio,
I'm sure this
for DeAndre Hopkins.
Slip of the tongue.
Julio is a free agent.
Extending Tannehill would do this, but you don't have to. In fact, it makes precious little sense for you. Of all the available options, Tannehill does not make sense, but you could see a path there. Extending Derek does not make sense, but you could foreseeably, or you could do a path there. Cutting Kevin Byard could give you the money that you need, but of course that would make you an infinitely worse football team, and it would not make you happy if you got Hopkins but gave up Byard, I'm certain. And then the fourth option, which we're going to spend a lot more time on tomorrow in the details of it, is restructuring Harold Landry, because that's the path of least resistance here.
But if you're saying that the Tannehill path doesn't make sense, then you're basically saying it doesn't make sense for Tannehill to be here beyond this season, right?
They should hope that Ryan Tannehill is not here beyond this season based on the path that they've just taken to roster construction. Because if Will Levis outright can't play by the time we get to year 2 and Ryan Tannehill's contract could theoretically be off the books, and we got a lot bigger problems than just a Ryan Tannehill extension. Wayne and Dixon is next. Hey, Wayne.
What's going on, man?
Not much.
Hey, I think you're kind of missing it. Vrabel said that he wants people that want to play here. I'm really thinking that Julio was traded here, but Julio really didn't want to play here, man. He really didn't.
Wayne, he showed up. He drove up from Atlanta the day after they traded for him and participated in a voluntary OTA.
Know that, but you think once he got here, did he really want to play here? Once he was excited at first, but I don't know.
I'm sure that he wanted to play here. I'm sure that he didn't want his hamstrings blowing up on him every other cut. You know what I'm saying? That's nonsensical to me. You have no idea what Julio Jones wanted. I think that's just a projection on a frustration of what that season was, and that's fine, Wayne. I'm sure plenty of other people feel that way too, but there's nothing to ground that in reality other than however you're projecting that you think Julio Jones felt about the situation with the Tennessee Titans. let's get into, let's take more of your phone calls coming up next. We'll read more of your comments on this situation. We'll also update you with some interesting free agent running back news and a collection of them that seems to be piling up out there in the streets. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. Titans wrapping up their final day of mandatory minicamp. Should be in about 15 minutes from now. Kevin Byard expected to meet with the media at 12:15. Obviously, the first time since KB has spoken, or first time KB has spoken since all the nonsense that's been going on all offseason. Pay cuts, fake reports about him asking for his own release from the Titans, yada, 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 yada. Either way, Kevin Byard will clear that up for you, and we will carry that press conference live at 12:15. So, Lucas, you have taken to the chat. You are arguing with people in there. What is it that you're trying to quell the masses on right now?
Well, I saw Jay in the F&M Bank chat said they're not going to cut Tannehill. That would make zero sense. So I said, nobody here is talking about cutting Tannehill. It's about whether or not to extend him in an effort to make room for DeAndre Hopkins. But I believe Jay was arguing with a previous person in the chat and not with what we were saying.
There's always somebody advocating to cut Tannehill. The last 3 years, I've just assumed it's coming into work at some point in my day. Somebody's either going to tweet, text, message, or call about cutting Tannehill.
Yeah.
At this point. Speaking of roster cuts, do you see that the Minnesota Vikings released Dalvin Cook this morning?
Yeah, that was the news of the day from Adam Schefter.
So Dalvin Cook, now released, he joins a stockpile of formerly great running backs that are available on the free agent market. Leonard Fournette, Zeke Elliott, Kareem Hunt, and now Dalvin Cook added to that list of running backs. Is there a scenario where you see any of that, like one being signed before the other at this point? Clearly and obviously, like Dalvin Cook, Zeke Elliott, Leonard Fournette, and Kareem Hunt have all been hugely successful football players across their career. They're also running backs, and the league is looking around and saying, one, well, we don't need to worry about these guys during mandatory minicamp and OTAs like that. We don't necessarily need them to be there for that if we're a team that's going to pursue those players at that position. But does it not feel that we are getting closer where Derrick Henry again, is the exception and not the rule at the running back position? McCaffrey and Kamara seem like they're staving this kind of, disposability off by nature of their receiving skills as well as being able to function as running backs. But I just think it's interesting that at all the names that keep backing up at that particular position that are just sitting out there and available, these are some really, really, in their careers, great players, even though we've seen the drop-off with Zeke. We've seen Fournette be less effective. Kareem Hunt was being used more as a complementary piece in Cleveland behind Nick Chubb, but Kareem Hunt, I think, is still only like 27 years old. Are we seeing – so I don't know where Dalvin Cook is going to land. I know I've seen Miami being a team that's been mentioned for a variety of different running backs. Hell, I'm pretty sure we saw Miami mentioned as a potential Derrick Henry landing spot, should that have been actually a real story rather than just something that we were talking about as a possibility this offseason. I don't know who would be immediately improved by any of those four names. Buffalo has been looking at running backs for the last couple of years, haven't seemed to find one to land on just yet. Miami, I don't think they have the offensive line in place to run the kind of offense that Mike McDaniel at his core wants to run. Though if they can figure out the health of Teron Armstead, their left tackle, it seems like that's been made a lot easier for them when he's on the field.
And Buffalo did sign Damian Harris.
Yeah, but okay, so let's do it through the context of, like, let's say Damian Harris is the best running back on Buffalo, on Miami. There's not a better running back on Miami than Damian Harris right now, right? Like, I need to look at their depth chart, but one does not come to mind. Now, maybe I'm forgetting draft picks and things like that, but I don't think any of those players that we're talking about from a football standpoint would be a better addition to a football team than, let's just use Damian Harris as replacement running back X. Is that where we're at with names like that, with Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook, Zeke Elliott, and Leonard Fournette? Are we largely just done with these guys' careers as kind of the last bell. Doesn't it feel like a little bit of the last bell cow generation with Derrick Henry, last man standing out here? Zeke was until they started to split him up with Pollard. Fournette, that seems to have been the best usage for him. And I know they were getting a lot out of it's Alexander Madison, right?
Yeah, Madison.
Alexander Madison.
Is it Mattison or is there an N before the S?
I thought it was Mattison, like Mattison, because Alexander Madison makes it sound like a former U.S. president.
Mattison. Yes, there's no N.
Actually, he's not a former U.S. president. Is Alexander Madison a president, or is he just a figure in, I don't know.
Alexander Madison?
That's not a president.
That's the name that you made up.
Okay. I think that's a figure in.
You're thinking of Alexander Hamilton. Just keep going.
I was trying to think of the name of the play. I'm like, it's not Madison. It's Hamilton. So bad. Rick in Hendersonville is next. Hi, Rick.
Hey. I'm sorry, a helicopter was going over.
That's okay.
The subject you're on right now, Dalvin Cook is interesting. He is only 27 years old. I'm curious as to what the difference in pay is between Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry, and does Derrick have any third-round trade value to him?
No, I wouldn't say at this point. I think the league is telling you what they think of running backs who are kind of in the same sphere as Derrick, right? Derrick Henry, I think, is still regarded as, whether you want to argue for Derrick Henry as the best pure running back in football right now versus any of the other names that you might mention who are a few years younger than Derrick at this point.
The answer to Rick's question is we don't know because Cook is a free agent, and we don't know what that number would look like.
I think he was asking in terms of, like, how much was Dalvin Cook making on his Vikings contract versus how much Derrick Henry was making on his current contract.
Cook signed a pretty big deal.
It was bigger than Henry's.
Yeah, Cook signed a pretty big deal starting in 2020. It was a 5-year, $63 million deal.
So I'm sorry, say the figures again.
5 years, $63 million.
And Derrick was 4 years.
50.
4 years, 50? Okay.
That's his current contract.
So with Derrick, Dalvin Cook, was Dalvin Cook thought of as a more versatile player than Derrick Henry? I think the answer to that is yes.
It's about the same average salary between the two.
And what are the guarantees? What were the guarantees on Cook's contract first? I'm sorry, I'm asking you a lot of questions.
Henry's was $25.5 million guaranteed. Cook's was $28.
So I would say that any trade market for Derrick Henry evaporated as soon as Austin Eckler went out there with a trade request. Because once you started to saturate the running back market at all, the league is telling you that they don't value running backs just because they're super famous college players and have been super productive pros. Any of these guys who you can name at any given point, like, they're content to find the running backs wherever they can find the running backs. And if Miami thinks they need a better one, they'll trade the 49ers for Jeff George, right? That's kind of where the position is at. Now, you can argue that that's wrong, and you can argue that Derrick is still clearly and obviously above any other player at the position, and I would accept that argument for Derrick Henry more than I would any other running back at this stage. But I do think that, again, for the same reasons that Derrick Henry wasn't pursued more this offseason, Derrick Henry is more important for the Tennessee Titans than he is any of the other 31 NFL teams. And also the 31 other NFL teams are largely content to go find, a couple of different running backs to do the job of one bell cow type of player that would cost them a hell of a lot more money. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. Let's get into some OTA minicamp reports that you should be taking with a grain of salt. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Free agent wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins will make his first visit with the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. It was first reported by Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. Titans' second-year wide receiver, Treylon Burks, was asked if there's a lot he could learn from the veteran wide receiver.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, he would be a great mentor. I've watched D-Hop since I was younger, one of my favorite players. And, he just carries himself the right way, and then his game on the field just speaks for itself. So.
Around the NFL, Adam Schefter reported this morning that the Minnesota Vikings have informed Dalvin Cook of his release. The 27-year-old running back is now a free agent. Mandatory minicamp continues today at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. We will hear from select Titans players, including safety Kevin Byard, coming up in a few minutes. You can hear it right here on The Zone. For your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour on this Thursday. Hope you're feeling right, living well. Thanks for hanging out with us. Titans have just wrapped up the final day of mandatory minicamp. You are starting to see the practice videos fly. Kevin Byard scheduled to meet with the media here in just about 15 minutes. We'll carry that for you live. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to get involved, and certainly be curious to hear from you guys. How much of training camp reports, or I guess not even training camp reports, off-season practice reports, how seriously do you take them? When you start to see, all of my colleagues who were able to make it out to practice today, obviously we're on the air, so I'm not going to be able to slide out for the majority of practice the way that I have been earlier this week. But we all tweet out our practice observations when we're able to do so, and those things are embargoed until practice is officially over for the day. And when we tweet out those observations, some things, a lot of times it sets the tone for what that week's or day's conversation is going to be, right? We see those things that we see. We tweet out the videos. We tweet out our notes. You guys take them, you make whatever observations you want about the videos, you make whatever commentary you want about the notes, and we continue an ongoing dialogue, and that's how I do 3 hours of talk radio, right? But how seriously do you take them? Because a lot of times, it's kind of tough to see what's really happening just by standing out there and watching practice. Now, obviously, all these practices are filmed. They're reviewing all of the film after they go in for the day. They're applying whatever they did well, whatever they did poorly, making the corrections, making the adjustments, and coming out on the practice field for the next day. They're watching practice film, right? I don't have access to practice film. I can't see practice film. There's only so many angles on the field that I can take. So, for example, when I asked Chigakonkwo about catching a touchdown pass over Amani Hooker in coverage, when he and I have been talking about, how good the competition is between him and Byard, and certainly you got the better of Amani Hooker the other day, didn't you? And this is what Chig had to say.
No, it was cover two. It wasn't his responsibility.
Oh, so see, but this is the problem, Chig. We see things from a certain angle, and it looks from our vantage point like you've beaten Amani Hooker in coverage, but we're not necessarily understanding the coverage there, I guess.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, no one... You don't really know unless you're in our building. So, yeah, it looks like he got beat, but you know how defense plays. Defense is different. It's different spots if it's not man coverage. So sometimes it looks like a guy got beat, whereas, it might not have been his responsibility.
So, that's on me, right? I couldn't see the coverage, or I didn't properly diagnose the coverage myself. So when I see Chigakonkwo streaking by Amani Hooker, and Amani Hooker's the closest DB chasing him, automatically in my head, that looks like Amani Hooker's been beaten.
Yeah, but how often are you doing that? Like, how often are you diagnosing coverages when you're on the sideline at practice?
Not on the sideline in practice, but certainly in the game. Like, that's what I have to do.
Right, and you have the vantage point in the press box and all those things.
We're a lot higher up. We can see everything from above, right? I try to watch practice. So the way that I try to watch practice is if Mac is out there, if Coach Mac is out there, I'll stand with him, right? I'll stand with Coach Mac because Mac will be able to see things or identify things that I can't and help me be able to diagnose, well, this player is doing this correctly. This player may not have made the play, but here's why he didn't make the mistake. That mistake is actually on this player who didn't execute his assignment in that spot. It's been a learning process, honestly, for me, just to learn how to watch practice in the best possible way. But it's almost always behind the defense because I want to see how the offense is adjusting. But without the vantage point from above, which is why they have those film boats with those giant cameras, like the giant poles coming out of the film boats with the cameras on top, because they want the above vantage point too, because they want to be able to identify whether the players are executing the correct coverages and things of that nature. So, Kay Oldham says, sarcasm alert, talking about you, asking me how often I'm trying to diagnose coverages on the sideline. The honest-to-God answer is every day. Every day that I'm out there. Because it's as much it's as much for how I'm going to ask questions later in practice, how I'm going to ask players questions about later in practice, but those things can get lost. Like, for example, the entire Titans media corps came out of Tuesday's practice saying, and I say that it's not even hyperbole, all of us said that the defense had a better day at practice. We asked the questions based on the defense having a better day at practice. And then we came up to Mike Vrabel yesterday and asked him about the defense having a better practice in the first day. And this was what Vrabel had to say.
I mean, I'm sure you're referencing the 50-yard go balls where we're trying to get guys up to 90% speed. So I don't think that's a very good you guys sit here and I try to follow each and every one of you and what you do, but there's probably 6 or 7 penalties yesterday, and we're hooting and hollering about the defense. You guys all congratulated the defense yesterday, so there was about 6 or 7 defensive pass interference penalties. So when you're referencing our ability to try to get players to 90%, I don't know if that's a accurate description. Certainly accuracy is very, very critical. We have to be able to move the ball down the field. Felt like that was something that Traylon was doing well, and Chig, we saw him yesterday be able to do that. So there is a timing element to them, making sure that the ball is in a place where those receivers can go up and make a play.
And you know why we're not identifying penalties out there as a media corps? Because there's no refs out there throwing flags. Right? That's usually the biggest. Now, I can spot things like offsides. I can spot things like false starts. Occasionally, you'll be able to see some hand fighting out there. But like all the pass interference penalties that Vrabel's talking about, I'm not seeing that in real time because I don't have access to the practice field tape. My larger point with this is it's become more evident to me the longer that I do this job and talk to players and try and get the best possible perspective I can, because it's my responsibility and Lucas's responsibility to give you the best picture humanly possible of what it is that we have access to that you may not. But I think that when I see all these practice observations and practice reports, and then talking to coaches after the fact, or having Chig on the radio show, or interviewing Vrabel at the podium yesterday, I just feel like so much of it, there is a thirst for that information. So people are inclined to give that information as quickly as humanly possible, especially in our industry. It's been a problem with reporting for years where it's not necessarily about being right, it's about being first. And so too, right? Who can get the first video of Kevin Byard out on Tuesday when we see him for the first time, because we know that's going to do better on social media. And because you want your video to get aggregated for Bleacher Report so you can get the most clicks and the most views, right? It's competitive, just like anything else. I do think, though, that it sometimes can do a disservice both to the people that we're there to evaluate and report on and study, and to the audience, because there's a lot of stuff that can get missed in those scenarios. So I just wanted to make sure that I was pointing that out to let you guys know that I think, as a media corps, we're aware of it too. We try to make sure that we're doing the best job in the coverage of the players and the coaches, but sometimes a lot of this stuff from any NFL team, from any media corps that's got open access to practice, there's a lot of details in there that may be left out in trying to give you the most full picture of what's happening in the day-to-day.
Speaking of practice observations,
Kevin Byard. We'll see what observations he had from practice because he'll be at the podium coming up next. Kevin Byard's going to be at the podium. Apparently, Amani Hooker is going to speak as well. We'll tell you who's up there when they wander up. Obviously, carry Kevin Byard's press conference for you live. And then for all the dramatics of this offseason, you can hear from the man himself about how he would choose to answer questions about the pay cut he was approached with and how he's managed things since then with an uncertain offseason for a lot of Titans star players. Speaking of Titans practice stuff, there are some observations that we'll get to here in just a second. But first, we have a giveaway, Lucas. Apparently we have giveaways every day for the next, couple of days, yeah?
That's right, because Father's Day is coming up. It's Dad's Week on 104.5 The Zone. When's Father's Day, Buck?
Oh, bleep.
You're a terrible son. It's coming up on June 18th. In a little over a week. So
wait. I'm a terrible person. Isn't June 18th the day you're dragging me and Bert to Bonnaroo with you?
We are going to Bonnaroo on June 18th.
So why am I the bad kid if you're the one scheduling things for me to do on Father's Day without telling me that it's Father's Day?
My father will be in Brazil. What's your excuse?
Well, I could make you feel really bad right now, but I won't do it.
Looking for a gift for Dad this Father's Day?
You better move on.
I actually have no idea where you were going to go with that, but I'm going to move it on anyway.
Well, my dad's dead.
Well, you're a terrible stepson. You're a terrible stepson. Be caller number 5 now.
Go ahead and give away the tickets now, Lucas.
Be caller 5 now, 615-737-1045 to win 4 tickets to take Dad to see Nashville Soccer Club host St. Louis SC next Saturday, June 17th at Geodis Park for Father's Day, plus a prize pack from Chattanooga Whiskey. It's Dad's Week, presented by Chattanooga Whiskey on 104.5 The Zone. This year, give Dad the best. Chattanooga Whiskey awarded Best Craft Producer of 2023 by Whiskey Magazine. For more info on Dad's Week, you can go to 1045thezone.com/Dad's Week. This is going to be a great game. St. Louis, an expansion team leading the Western Conference right now, kind of taking the league by storm, and obviously Nashville in the midst of a fantastic run of their own, playing confidently, especially at home with a very, very fun style of play for both teams. So 4 tickets to the game and a prize pack from Chattanooga Whiskey.
615-737-1045 is how you win the tickets. Caller number 5, you said, yeah? There looks like there's quite a few more than 5, so you can get to number 5 and give those tickets away. Meanwhile, some practice observations for you here, courtesy of my good friend and colleague, Teron Davenport at ESPN. TD says, new addition to the not spotted group on the final day of minicamp, T.R. Tart. That includes Caleb Farley, Harold Landry, Dylan Radens, all due to injury. No sign of Christian Fulton, Josh Thompson, who was a reserve safety, special teamer, Sam O., whose last name I'm not going to attempt, but he's the edge rusher, and then Trayvon Wesco, who has missed the last 2 days of practice, the free agent tight end that they added. A couple of minicamp notes specific to the red zone drills that they were running. Apparently Malik Willis had a really nice touchdown pass to Reggie Robertson, corner of the end zone. Defense apparently shut down pretty much everything else during the red zone period. Both Caleb Shudak, kicking updates. Caleb Shudak and Trey Wolf kicked field goals. Wolf was 6 of 7, missed from 42. Shudak, 7 of 7, both good from 50 and 52, respectively. Okay, those are your practice observations from the final day and mandatory minicamp. We'll see what right now the players are being met with off the practice field, and we'll see what Kevin Byard has to say about all this. You know, I think a lot of the angst around Kevin Byard is fair, given how much he means to the city, how much he means to the state, how much he means to the Tennessee Titans defense in particular, both as a player on the field and as a member of the community off the field. He obviously does great work for a variety of different causes. And so when the news came out from Adam Schefter that Kevin Byard had been asked for a pay cut, been asked to take a pay cut, and that he declined, you know, the next question, of course, and the question that I assume will be asked today is, okay, well, now what? Because they haven't done anything with his contract. They obviously haven't released him. Based on my understanding, there's no intention for Kevin Byard to play for another team other than the Tennessee Titans at this point. So how Kevin, or I guess how Rand Carthon thought this was going to go down versus how it actually ended up going down, I don't necessarily know that they had a backup plan here beyond asking Kevin Byard to take a pay cut. Now, what they would use those resources for, I mean, at the time it was pre-free agency, so perhaps they might have been able to target a different player or two than their finances ultimately ended up allowing for them. But I think that when you look at Kevin Byard's situation, there is no concern. At least I have no concern. His teammates certainly don't, and the coaching staff doesn't seem to either. There's no concern that any of this is going to affect him as a player because he's still a high-level player. Now, whether he's ever an All-Pro again or how many times he goes back to the Pro Bowl or whatever the Pro Bowl is at this stage of its existence, we'll see what happens. I think that Kevin Byard a lot of times gets unfairly saddled with deficiencies elsewhere on the defense. And while he's trying to do, like in 2020 or towards basically the middle of last year, a good portion of it, with all the injuries that they had at corner, he's trying to make up for the guys who either aren't doing their job, aren't out there, or missing a play here or there, not necessarily understanding a coverage or not executing the way that they need to. But, I don't think there's any – of all the concerns around Kevin Byard from Titans fans, none of them has been about his performance, right? There's not been one. Maybe you're concerned with how much love he'll have for an organization that just kind of – is it too strong for me to say that it is disrespectful to ask Kevin Byard for a pay cut? Is that too strong? Because it almost feels too strong for me to even put it that way. I understood why they did it.
You could say it's understandable for Kevin Byard to, if you are in Kevin Byard's shoes, to feel disrespected.
And I am not Kevin Byard, so I will not speak for Kevin Byard.
Kevin Byard's about to speak for Kevin Byard. But it's fair to say that as someone whose performance did not go down, why should my pay go down? And to feel some element of disrespect if anybody's boss came into the room and posed them that scenario.
So, but I don't want to assume anything, right? And like I said, we'll hear from him here in just a second. It's almost impossible, though, to imagine a scenario where he didn't feel a little hurt by that, right? And that's not, obviously that's not what you want to do. You don't want to jack with your star players that way, especially the ones who continue to be good soldiers, no matter how good or bad your situation looks at any given moment, especially the guy who's out there during the Dallas Cowboys game, because Kevin Byard's a football player. There's a football game. It's Thursday night. Don't care if the rest of my teammates aren't playing because of injury or trying to protect them for the Jacksonville game and winning in potential, and on and on and on it goes. Kevin Byard is the one guy who football teams want every other football player to act like, to be like, to represent their franchise with. And that was the guy who was asked to take less money this year. So how much he's paid attention to it, it's almost impossible for him to ignore it or to avoid it. Derrick Henry talked about the idea that it came up between the two of them, between he and Kevin Byard, about both situations around them that have been swirling this offseason. Derrick's was very quickly put to bed by Rand Carthon, saying that he had neither approached nor been approached about trading for Derrick Henry, despite the rumor mill that had gone around there. Rand Carthon did confirm that he did approach Kevin Byard about taking a pay cut, but did not provide us as to a resolution on what might happen there. And the resolution might not be Byard now, right? Like that might have just been an option on the table for them. They thought about it. They tried to explore it. It didn't work out in their favor. They've looked at other ways to try and free up some finances. So I think that with this, it's just about, does it benefit Kevin Byard to wait this long to talk, right? Is I guess the only thing that would keep it from continuing to spiral. Because I see a comment there from in the F&M Bank chat from Charles Floyd, who says, making a mountain out of a molehill, that's par for course with media. And I don't necessarily disagree. But I do think that if Kevin Byard wanted to wanted for there to be a resolution on this earlier, he could have just said something or put out his own statement on social media and moved on with his day. The way that Lamar Jackson was kind of doing it. But Lamar Jackson, I think on social media and messaging around the contract, I felt like it became more convoluted almost.
Yes. 100%.
Do you feel like that did a disservice to Lamar's cause? him being on social media at all.
Saying
Saying
that
that
he got what he wanted.
He did get what he wanted. He got the contract that he wanted. Maybe not exactly what it looked like or what he wanted it to look like, or maybe not exactly every financial term or condition that he wanted included in there. But at least Lamar Jackson got the opportunity or took it into his own hands to speak on his own situation. Now, maybe I'm looking at this as somebody who's just reading tweets of a quarterback who's in the middle of a contract situation without him being able to, without being able to ask him follow-ups about the tweets, and that's what makes it worse. So maybe that's not the best approach. But I do think if Kevin Byard wanted to, put out a video on his social media and say, hey, here's what's going on, here's where I'm at, here's what I'm doing, and I'll see you guys once training camp starts or once mandatory minicamp starts, then sure, it would have shortened the time for us to continue to talk about this. And while I do understand the assessment of media making more out of a situation that is newsworthy and noteworthy, I don't think that the Kevin Byard thing has been blown out of proportion in the coverage of it. One of the best players on the football team whose performance does not indicate that he should be playing for less money was approached about a pay cut. He declined. That would indicate some level of disagreement between Kevin Byard and the organization about who he is or what he thinks he's worth. Those are just facts about the situation.
We put it to a poll. What do you want to hear from Titan safety Kevin Byard today? And Robert said he wants to hear, quote, "We worked it out."
And what if you don't get that? What then? He's up. I mean, they're starting the press conference. Let's go to Kevin Byard now, and then we can have the answers to all these questions.
Foremost, I kind of want to address the whole OTAs and things like that. I had been in communication with the coaching staff really early in the offseason before, obviously, all this news and all this stuff that came out, that, I was going to have my own plan to be able to train on my own. Obviously, every player on this team is in a different stage of their career. I am very comfortable, obviously, being with Shane, being with the coach staff Vrabel for 5 years, Shane being our coordinator for the last 4. Very comfortable within the defense. I had stayed in communication with the coaches this entire offseason about any new stuff that we had, any new nuances that was coming out within the defense. But I had been enjoying training on my own and felt it was very important. And it really was never any doubt from the coaches and my end that, I wasn't going to be here for minicamp. I knew I was going to be here and be the same player that I always been, be the same leader that I always will be. So I kind of just want to put that out there. I know you guys got some other questions, but just want to put that out there.
So you're saying that before all the stuff with the contract came up, you had already decided that you wanted to train on your own as opposed to being here every day?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of be able to, obviously, being in tune with what was going on as far as in the meetings, but as far as the strength and conditioning part of it, I had already gotten to the really good groove on my own. I had started working out probably 2 weeks after the Super Bowl on my own. And I kind of just want to keep that routine, keep that training going. And I felt really good out here today, these past couple of days with my condition and everything. So I'll continue to do that, obviously, through the summer and get ready to have a really good year.
How did you feel when they came to you to ask about pay reduction?
I mean, I don't really want to get into my feelings or anything about that and any emotions about, I guarantee you I would not be the last player, and I haven't been the first player to come to about a pay cut. I let my agent and the organization, or obviously Rand and the GM, handle those things. I felt it was very important for myself, though, and for me to come here and be a leader and be the person I've always been, making plays, communicating, and things like that. So, and that's who I'm always going to be. And I just felt that was very important for me.
Kevin, was there any conversation about you being moved or you talking to them about moving you or anything like that?
Like I said, I really didn't get into all that. Really don't want to get into all that. Because, like I said, man, at the end of the day, I came here for minicamp, and I came here to make sure I was going to focus on football, and that's all I'm focused on right now. Like I said, I hired people to handle business like that.
Plan worked as far as doing what you did this offseason, as far as preparing?
I feel like it's been really great. I feel good. I feel great. I feel fast. And like I said, and still being able to be in tune with everything that was going on with the coaching and all that stuff, I feel really good. I feel really good about, being in meetings the past couple of days and being around Coach Harris. I mean, his energy is very, very contagious. I really love the way he's coaching, just energy just on the sideline. And obviously bringing in some of the guys like Sean. I actually hung out with him before, mini camps started, so I've been able to be around the guys. So it's been pretty good.
The relationship with Rand Carthon? Like, he's known as a people guy. How has that been for you developing that relationship with him?
Yeah, I've had conversations with him before. This was in February. Actually, so when I told you I started working out probably 2 weeks after the Super Bowl, I was coming here working out with Frank, and obviously when Rand got the job, he came in the weight room. We kind of chopped it up a little bit. We had some conversations and things like that. Obviously, I was congratulating him and things like that, and obviously being away from the building and doing different things in the community. I was out in L.A., then NFL broadcast boot camp, and some guys that knew him. Just everybody spoke highly of the guy, spoke about how he's a people's person, how, obviously he came from the football background, undrafted free agent, and kind of worked his way up. Can't do nothing but salute a guy like that and just congratulate him.
You talked about having individual conversations with you and Derek and Ryan. Obviously, I assume you don't want to get into it, but just how did that assuage you? Did it make you feel better at all?
No, so like I said, obviously I'm not going to get in Derek's business or Tannehill's business. But the conversation I just had with him was just on a personal level. It had nothing to do with that. So like I said, the conversations I had with him, they was really good. And like I said, I think Rand's a really good guy. I think he was a really good addition to this organization just by who he is. And, Vrays, we always talk about bringing in people with high character, and I think he's a high character person based off the conversations and the time I just spent around him.
Kevin, do you think being here this week marks some kind of finality with them considering doing anything with your contract? Like, is this a mark of you being here and being ready for the year, or do you think it's still an ongoing process?
Man, I just control the things that I can control. Because like I said, there was no doubt me coming here. So I didn't want to, this is not a whole thing with me coming here with just I'm here. It wasn't nothing like that. This was always the plan. And I'm going to continue to work my plan throughout this offseason. So, yeah, it really had nothing to do with nothing like that.
You're here next week.
I don't want to get into all that right now, PK.
I would say a lot of players in your position, being a vet, doing everything right, being a consistent player, it'd be hard for people to come to them and say, hey, can you take a pay cut? What's happened in your past that built you to be the man you are, to kind of push that off and say, I'm just going to be here for my team. I'm going to continue to be KB.
Yeah, because that's just who I am. Everything that I've, over my entire life, over my entire career, I just try to be consistent on the field and off the field. Don't get too high, don't get too low. I actually, had a meeting with the group earlier this morning, and we kind of had a word of the day or whatever, and I just, gratitude is always a word that I try to wake up with every single day. Blessed to be in this building, blessed to be around this team, blessed to be around this organization. I had a conversation with you guys on Clean Out Day saying that, how much I love this organization. This is my legacy and me being here. So no matter what happens, man, I'm just grateful for every opportunity that I get.
Are you still as happy here doing what you're doing with the Titans as you have been the last 7 years?
100%. So like I said, man, I just take every day for what it is and not try to think too far in the future or think about the past, man. I just try to focus on what's in front of me. And what's been in front of me this week, obviously, with minicamp and everything, it's been really great. It's been really good to be around the guys just flying around making plays.
When the Jeff contract got done, Rand said what this symbolizes is that we're going to draft our guys, we're going to develop them, and if they do the right things, we're going to reward them. You're basically the poster child for that. Is there a little different message when they come to you and ask you to take a pay cut?
I don't know about a different message. Obviously, Jeff, he's earned his contract. His contract extension. I was very happy for him. I obviously texted him immediately, gave him congratulations. And that's just what it was about, man. Like I said, I don't think that, the pay cuts and stuff like that has anything to do with, who we're going to pay, who we're not going to pay. So like I said, at the end of the day, I just try to focus on what I can do. I don't try to do anything else and try to focus on the what ifs and things like that. I just take for whatever's in front of me and just try to take it in stride.
Kevin, you had kind of done everything the team had asked for, whether it was on the field, whether it was off the field, or whatever. I guess so my question is, was there any kind of a feeling from you that maybe you were being taken for granted a little bit when they asked you to take a pay cut when you have done so much, pretty much everything they'd asked?
Like I said, I'm just gonna keep being who I am. And whatever happens, but I'm just going to keep being the person that I always been, being the same leader, being the same player, because that's what it's at the bottom line. I'm here to be the best safety that I could possibly be for this organization, and I'm going to continue to do that.
You talk about different ways you can improve, what you can do better. When you look back at last year, how do you think you played, and what's maybe next? What do you need to do better this year?
Well, I just think for myself personally, there was a lot of things I can improve. I think just from every single level, I could have made a lot more plays. I feel like, I made plays last year, but I can always make more. Obviously, especially looking at our, secondary play and the numbers and things like that. Those things have to improve. But like I said, I think with the addition of Coach Harris, some different things we're doing on the back end, I think we have the ability to be elite this year. And I fully 100% believe that with the guys that we have and just the conversations we're having in the back end, doing some different things. I'm very confident in that.
And Kevin, you spoke of Coach Harris's energy and the things that he brings. How does that help you, a veteran on this team? Has that changed anything in how you approach the game? Have you picked up anything from him?
It doesn't change anything for me. I always try to bring energy every single day, try to motivate the guys, try to inspire them by not only just my vocal leadership, but my actions as well. But it's always great to have your coach out there flying around, having fun. If a guy makes a play, he's running down 30 yards down the field, excited. And he's played the game. He played the game for 8 years. So I think, same thing I talk about, Vrabel, was very easy to buy into the things he's saying because he's done it before. He's done it at a high level. So it's been excited to work with him.
As you decided to do your own thing at OTAs, do you think there's any level of psychological thought about what they asked you to do, or was there any advice from your agent or anything like that?
No, it wasn't, because like I said, obviously I didn't communicate with my agent that early, but I had already talked to the coaches that I was going to train on my own and do my own thing. So, no, it was no psychological thing. I've seen Vrabel multiple times this offseason, on the golf course, and we just chopped it up, having fun with each other. So nothing psychologically changes for me, because at the end of the day, my job is always to be the best safety I can possibly be for this organization. So it doesn't change anything. I just continue to train as hard as I can and try to be the best player I can be.
So you made the decision as far back as February and March?
Earlier than that.
What was the thing about training by yourself that you thought would be beneficial? Like
I said, man, like I said, every player, they're in a different stage, of their careers. We've had guys on this team that, reported from minicamp or whatever it may be. I just felt that was going to be my decision this year, very early in the off season, and I feel like it's turned out great for me as far as where I am with my body and my training and how good I feel. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't missing anything as far as in the meetings and things like that. I just wanted to be able to, I got my trainer out here as far as that I work out with. So on the strength conditioning part, I wasn't missing anything at all, and obviously in the meetings, I wasn't missing anything. So.
Did you change anything in terms of how you trained being off on your own, as far as your physique or your conditioning, diet, anything like that?
Well, so working out so early in the off season, which was obviously middle of February, I had already was ramping all the way up. And usually when you coming into April, they kind of take things back a little bit because guys are just reporting, but I'm already full speed going. And I didn't want to change that. I wanted to be able to keep going and keep pushing myself. I wouldn't say just to a different level, but I want to keep going with my plan. And like I said, the coaches were receptive of it. And I feel like it's shown over the past couple of days that I'm still in shape and not missing a beat at all.
You're a great communicator, and you give us clarity on a lot of things. You had to know how it was going to look or how it was going to be perceived based on the pay cut request and then you not being here. Were you tempted at all to clarify that, or what was it like to know that the rumblings were you were somehow upset with the franchise, therefore you weren't here?
No, I didn't feel the need to clarify anything. That's one of the reasons why, I really wasn't just like active on trying to jump on the next podcast and, and stuff like that, or getting on social media, deleting, like all that's nonsense. Well, at least for me personally, I know players have different ways of how they handle things. I didn't see a need to do any of that because I didn't want to make it a story, make it a thing, because it's really not a thing in my mind. Like I said, every single day I wake up in the morning with gratitude, and I just want to be the best player and the best person I could possibly be, because that's the only thing I can focus on. Control what you can control, because that's been my mentality, that's been my character my entire life. To control what you can control. You can't control if Kentucky takes your scholarship. You got to go to, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't control those things. You just got to work on yourself and try to be a better player and a better person. That's it.
With Logan, Ryan?
Yeah, I was.
What were you guys doing in terms of, is he back here too and you're working with him?
No, so Logan was in town doing some media stuff. He was on Good Morning Football, and he was telling me how good it went. So he got some people helping him out doing some media stuff. So he came here in Nashville and did some media shows and things like that. He hit me out here, let's work out together. So like I said, I already been training on my own, so he came in, got some work in with me. We kind of hung out a little bit, and that's when obviously him and Sean played together, and that's we kind of made that connection. We hung out a little bit. So now it was good to see him, man. Me and Logan, we talk a lot. We talk all the time. We actually was in Hawaii for the NFLPA, our annual meetings, and we hung out there. So good friend of mine and a longtime friend of mine.
I'm kind of Remind you of him in any way in terms of just the way he kind of presents himself and the leadership aspect too?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I want to compare both of them because they're both a little different. Obviously, Logan was a really good leader. He done a lot of things for us, being really versatile. They're definitely both versatile in that way. I think Sean, he's a really good leader for our cornerback room. But at the same time, he listens. He wants to learn. He wants to be coached. And that's the type of players that we want to bring into the organization. So I think he's been a good fit for us.
How different does this offense look to you?
How different does it look? Well, as far as the scheme and everything, it's definitely a little different. But I would say that some guys that, impressed me. I know the running back Spears, he's been really good. Traylon looks like a different beast this year for sure. I think he's just playing with a lot of confidence. I really like that from him, taking that next step, because we're going to need him to take that next step this year to be that guy. But at the end of the day, no matter what, I think just with quarterbacks and everybody, I think everybody's just firing. But, we all know OTAs, man. It's about learning. Everybody's out here learning, try to, whether they're getting a new offense together. As far as the defense, we're trying to pick up things. So it's always a little bit back and forth between the offense and the defense. But I really like the way they're looking right now. And like I said, I think they'll do nothing but keep getting better, keep going this way. Yeah, no problem. I'm going.
That's Kevin Byard. We can react to that coming up next. Wrapping it up for this Thursday show. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you missed any of it, go check out the podcast. It's available in the Buck Rising Show podcast feed, wherever it is you get your podcast. There's also a new episode of The Install, the latest edition from the live show. Greg Cosell and myself breaking down Tajay Spears and Colton Dow. Check that out. The Install, wherever you get your podcast as well. Subscribe, follow, review, whatever they're calling it now. It's follow, not subscribe anymore, right? Subscribe makes it sound like you're paying for something. I think that's the etiquette, the talking points.
Yeah, fair enough.
On the podcast thing nowadays. So I don't know necessarily that we need to spend a ton of time reacting to KB there. I think everything that you wanted out of that, you probably got. So if you want a full KB reaction show, I will be back at it tonight on A to Z Sports Prime Time. 8 p.m. Central Time is when Bert and I will do the damn thing. In the meantime, we can do some polls.
I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Because the polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. It's time for a poll update. And he's a good boy. Buck Rising Show producer and correspondent, Lucas Panzica.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. Where would the Titans wide receiver room rank in the NFL if DeAndre Hopkins becomes a part of it? Brian says not 32nd, where it is now. Darius says middle of the pack, maybe top 20.
I don't think it goes from 32 to top 20, but I mean, I would certainly not rank them or not make them the worst wide receiving core in football the way that I would currently project them as.
Yeah, Andrew says no higher than 25. A 31-year-old D-Hop, unproven Burt/Phillips, and NWI. I just don't think it changes it that much.
Somebody in the YouTube chat says, don't forget quarterback rankings for tomorrow. We have anything, what are we doing with quarterback rankings tomorrow? Do they know something that I don't about the programming of this radio show?
Probably. I don't know.
Okay, very good. I'm not interested in doing quarterback rankings tomorrow or until the end of time. Thank you very much.
How much do you take away from OTA or minicamp practice reports? Brian says absolutely nothing. Brent says next to nothing. Jeff says I only take the good and ignore the bad.
I love that. You know, injuries, obviously, catching up with players who you haven't had the opportunity to talk to in a while, at least for me, right? How much you make from the actual goings-on in the 11-on-11 and 7-on-7 stuff, I think that can be pretty arbitrary. It's easy to get caught up in it, though, is what I'll say.
What do you want to hear from Titan safety Kevin Byard? Obviously, we have heard from Byard. Carter says he wanted to hear where Kevin stands with the organization.
And you did not hear anything to that effect whatsoever.
I mean, it's pretty much business as usual, right? KB's here for minicamp, and he is a Tennessee Titan.
And he doesn't want to talk about everything else that went down, which is, of course, the story of his entire offseason.
Which free agent running back gets signed first? 84% say it's Dalvin Cook, 7% say Kareem Hunt, then 5% say Ezekiel Elliott, and only 4% say Leonard Fournette.
I honestly have no idea. Like, I mean, I don't think Zeke, just because Zeke, we could already see depreciating value. I think Fournette, has his ceiling. The other two have more receiving versatility, so I would say one of the other two, I suppose.
This was already the conversation, but obviously just further secures the fact that you're not trading Derrick Henry.
Yeah, Derrick Henry, well, he doesn't have any value anywhere else the way that you might think he does. All right. It's going to do it for us today. Primetime tonight. Blaine and Mickey next. They got Roger McCreary. That should be fun. I'll see you tomorrow at 10.